The car didn't slow down first. It didn't sputter. It didn't warn me. One moment, the headlights were cutting cleanly through the road ahead, and the next, the dashboard went dark, and the engine shut off so cleanly, it felt intentional. I rolled to a stop without touching the brake, the silence arriving before my confusion did. I checked the time, out of reflex, 12:17 a.m. I tried the ignition once, then again, slower the second time, like the car might respond to patience. Nothing, no clicking, no resistance, just a dead key, turning in a dead machine. The forest around me didn't feel hostile. That was the problem. It felt settled, like I had arrived late to something that had already been quiet for a long time. The trees loomed in the moonlight, tall and still, shadows pooling like ink between the trunks. I turned on the hazard lights, more to reassure myself than anyone else, and watched their orange flashes ripple across the trees in uneven rhythm. Each blink seemed slower than the last, lingering on the edges of the undergrowth in a way that made the darkness feel thick and almost tactile. I stayed inside the car. I told myself that was the smart choice, but after a few minutes, I realized something was wrong with the hazards. They weren't reflecting the same way anymore. The trees on the right side of the road seemed closer than they had been before, their trunks catching more light with each blink, the shadows stretching unnaturally, like fingers reaching out. I leaned forward, squinting through the windshield, trying to remember how far the shoulder had extended when I first stopped. I was still thinking about that when something knocked on the back of the car. Not hard, not aggressive, just a single, flat sound, like someone tapping metal with their knuckles to check if it was hollow. I froze. My hands stayed on the steering wheel. I didn't turn around. I didn't even breathe fully. I waited for another sound, footsteps, breathing, anything that would make it make sense. Nothing came. After a full minute passed, I told myself it had to be a branch or wind or an animal. I unlocked the doors without meaning to, then immediately locked them again. When I realized what I'd done, my pulse felt too loud in the enclosed space, and the shadows between the trees seemed to twitch in time with it. The knock came again. Same place, same pressure. This time, it was followed by movement, not footsteps, but something circling slowly around the car, brushing against the body panels with a faint, metallic scrape. The sound paused near the driver's side door and stayed there, deliberate. I spoke without planning to, asked if someone was there. My voice sounded wrong in the air, like it didn't belong. There was no reply. Instead, the hazard lights stopped blinking. I hadn't touched the switch. The car was completely dark now, the forest rushing in to fill the space the light had held. I reached for my phone again, tilting it just enough to see the screen glow. Still no signal. But something else was wrong. My phone said it was 12:17 a.m., the same time as before. I stared at it longer than I should have, refreshing the screen, locking and unlocking it, waiting for the minute to change. It didn't. Outside, something shifted its weight near the rear bumper, metal creaking softly. In response, I dared not look directly at it, my eyes tracing the slightest movement in the reflection of the windshield. I tried the ignition again. This time, the dashboard lit up. Only part of it. The speedometer jumped to life, the needle twitching. Even though the car wasn't moving, the radio display turned on and immediately began scanning through stations on its own, stopping briefly on each burst of static before moving on again. Then a voice came through. Not a broadcast, not music, just breathing. Low, wet, deliberate, as though it was testing the air, testing me. I shut the radio off so fast my finger hurt. The breathing stopped with it. I sat there in complete silence, afraid to touch anything else, afraid that doing so would start something I couldn't stop. That was when the headlights turned on. They weren't aimed at the road. They were aimed at the trees, directly into the space where the forest had been slowly closing in. The light revealed a narrow path that hadn't been there before, pressed into the ground like it had been walked over and over again. The undergrowth bent and broken in a way that suggested careful, repeated travel. Something stepped back into the darkness as the beams hit it. I didn't see a face. I didn't see a body, just movement, retreating into the trees with familiarity, confident, as if it owned the space. The engine started on its own. I didn't wait to understand why. I put the car in drive and followed the road as it reappeared in front of me, the forest pulling back just enough to let me pass. The hazard stayed off. The radio stayed silent. The time on my phone finally changed. Every blink of the dashboard lights felt like it was breathing with me, a rhythm I didn't want to acknowledge. When I reached the highway, the relief hit so hard I had to pull over, gripping the wheel for longer than necessary, feeling every shadow in the trees behind me linger, even after the lights of the road swallowed it whole. The next day, a mechanic checked the car. He couldn't find anything wrong. No electrical fault, no engine issue, no record of the system resetting itself. What he did ask was why my headlights were misaligned, angled several degrees to the right, like they'd been adjusted deliberately. I didn't answer. How could I explain the quiet intelligence that had watched me, the way it had guided me, or perhaps tested me without sounding insane? I don't drive that road anymore, but sometimes, when my car idles too quietly at night, I wonder how long it had been waiting for something to stop there, whether it had been waiting for someone to notice the subtle shift in the forest, and whether it was disappointed when I left or simply patient, knowing it would be there again for the next person at the next night when the road fell silent and the world forgot.